Grand Rising Soul family. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. Today we are coming live from TEPOZTLAN, Mexico. My brother Kale Ka'alekahi. And yeah, I'm just like basking in the abundance that we are really in here today. And you know, today we want to drop in around themes on masculinity and what does honest masculinity look like in a world full of misogynistic popular culture. And I believe that there's another perspective that we can dive into here as sacred sons and as children of this planet. So with that, our guest today, he's a spiritual activist. He's a cultural innovator, and he does not exist. Welcome, Kale Ka'alekahi.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, it's good to be out here, man.
It's good to be out here.
Waiting for this.
First one we did was in Maui.
Yeah.
Then we had to go to Zoom.
Yeah.
And now we're here, and we just sparred.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
It was always a good time.
We got a cold plunge in. We got some sparring in.
Yeah.
Feels good. Feels good.
I think what I like about where we're at now is it just happens so naturally. It doesn't have to be forced.
Yes.
And I feel like at times, because we're reaching our edges in the beginning of work, like, you know, we're connecting, we're bonding, and we're learning of each other. And now it's just like, oh, do you guys want to do this? Like, yeah. Like, we just go do this, where sometimes it's kind of like, oh, shit, I don't know if I want to. But it's been like a big piece for us to spar with each other. And,
yeah.
And it's like there's a lot more being said in that than just like having to talk all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Let's talk about that. I believe
Yeah.
people may see videos of what we do and, you know, what's happening broadly.
Yeah.
And they see it as violence.
Oh, yeah.
And so I get this question a lot, like, well, you guys are doing all this men's work, and I love to see the emotion, but why do you have to fight?
Yeah.
That's a question I always get. Why do you have to fight? So why do we fight?
Why do we fight? So that's such a broad question. I think maybe I could just reference from the orientation of like violence, right? And like how things go. I mean, a lot of times I hear people say, oh, you know, we are nature. Like they just say it, we just nature, we're natural, we're humans, we're nature. As if like somehow because you say it, therefore it's true. I'm like, well, if you ever look at nature, nature is violent. And what is that perception? That's the perception that we have of this idea that we're supposed to be elevated above that. That somehow we're supposed to evolve further and become these pristine beings. This purity culture, I think, is an infection. Yeah. And so when people talk about what's natural and what's nature, I think they're really missing a whole big part of what that is. I mean, it's like you look at, doesn't even have to be predatory. You look at these cutter ants I just saw earlier, and they have a whole lumberyard going on up there. And then to that grass, like, yeah, it's a patch there now because of those ants. Yeah. People wouldn't perceive ants as being violent, I wouldn't say, right? Because it's always like, you know, what are people used to? Is like, oh, they're lawn, they see these ants. You go out in the jungle, you got bullet ants, they're gonna eat you. You know what I mean? So like, why do we fight? I'm not saying we're fighting for the purpose of just bringing violence into the container or into the men's work. I'm saying if we want to be natural and of nature, we have to understand our limitations and our boundaries. Yes. And if you think that you can just go around and do whatever you want in your life because you're this individual, where does that come from? Yeah. Entitlement comes from a disassociation. It comes from a conditioning that's been brought about in a society that praises the individual above all else. Yeah. But then what happens when you actually feel your limitations, you feel the resistance for somebody else? Now you start to course correct. You start to self-correct.
And that's what it is. It's a test.
It is.
We're being tested as men. We know this. Yeah. Like, initiation is a requirement for growth, for expansion, for maturity. And it's largely missing in our culture. Yeah. And you grew up playing sports, you grew up fighting, you grew up, you know, I would say, like, did you grow up with violence, right? And how has it transformed into this initiatory work?
Yeah, well, you know, growing up I was a very angry kid. I didn't know why. I didn't have like the capacity or the awareness really at a young age to know what was happening. Yeah. So what was shown to me was anger and violence can be used as a tool for control and dominance. And so that's what I was trafficking in. That's what I thought was making me more of a man, to be able to punish another man and make me feel like I was here and he was there. It's like, okay, good.
It's like demanding respect.
Demanding respect. And then you look at sports, like we were just saying, is that you look at sports, it's like, that's what's happening a lot of times. You could have somebody who's an amazing human being, you know, and a great family man. But as an athlete, and no matter what capacity, it's like they got to perform.
Yeah.
And that performance aspect of it is somebody has to lose in order for you to gain. And so in the way that we've been taught with our masculinity was like competition, and not just the competition of the survival of the fittest, but the competition in the way to dominate everything around you so that no one else can touch you because you're afraid of getting hurt.
Right.
So I better hurt them before they hurt me. And that's the little boy. And so we aggrandize little boy, mentality in this society because the culture is constantly, reinforcing it. It's like it's incentivizing you to be that way. So as I progressed and I matured in my masculinity, in my manhood, and as a man, I didn't have all the things that I would have liked, of course, of having rites of passage. So I got that later in life, but I had to put myself there.
Yeah.
I saw my culture. I saw other people's cultures. I learned from other people, from elders who had gone through these rites of passage. And it's for me, when it came to the aspect of martial arts and fighting, combatives, it was jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai that taught me a lot about self-defense.
Yeah.
And that training, I got to see guys who brought in a lot of their own egos of the place that I used to be in. So I could use that as
a reference point.
As a reference point.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I don't want to be that guy, but I want to beat him.
Yeah.
I do. Because
And
he's doing that to everybody else.
Right.
And I felt very protective of the mat.
Yeah.
And so for a time, I wasn't the best, but I got my conditioning up and I brought my mentality, my spirituality to it.
Yeah.
To where if somebody was bringing all that energy, I just absorbed it and turn it around.
Yeah.
And that was a big part for me to mature in that.
Yeah, there's another side of that coin where it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to be peaceful, I'm nonviolent.
Yeah.
This, especially in yoga, spiritual communities.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to avoid it, but we see what happens.
Yeah.
It comes out sideways.
Oh, absolutely.
It comes out in suicide. Now we got all these influencers. They made the money. They have the wife and the family. They take their own lives because, and this is a projection, but it's like maybe they haven't been really tested, and so they lose the money or they lose whatever it is that they valued, and then who are they? It's a privilege on this planet, in nature, as we are nature,
Yes.
right? To be nonviolent.
Yeah.
That is a privilege.
Entirely.
However, we are also protectors.
Yes.
We're also providers.
Yes.
Just like those cutter ants cutting those leaves,
Yeah.
but not lumberyard, they're providing.
Yes.
And so we have to be physically embodied in order to do that.
Yeah, entirely. And so that's a big chain of events right there. So to me, like, yes, the privilege of it, yes, because we do live in a society where, we have a lot of access and we have a lot of mobility in the society.
Yeah.
Being part of the United States of America, we are in one of the most affluent societies in the entire world, right? And so that allows us the privilege to do certain things. I don't believe in white privilege. I don't believe in male privilege. Yeah. I don't think any of that exists. I think overall as a society, we are privileged because of the way that our nation or our country has chosen to move about in the world. So when it comes to that understanding of like being a vegan or doing yoga, when you put yourself on a pedestal because you're believing that somehow you are more evolved or more whatever than another person, and your ego is showing, like, give me a break.
Yeah.
Because as soon as it comes down to it, at least from my experience, what I've seen, the people that feel that way and talk like that, as soon as push comes to shove, where are they?
Hiding.
They're hiding.
Yeah.
Because they're hiding their whole life. Because they're putting this thing up. It's the purity culture, it's the privilege, it's all this stuff. Because they're imagining that there's a better place for them to be.
Right.
Instead of right here in the raw, in the real, in the muck, in the dirt. And I'm starting to see like a shift and a change in those communities. I'm starting to see them like really like come back down to earth. But the fact that we can do that is because we're part of a system that engages us to be that way. And that comes along too with this idea that we're not enough, as human beings. Like we don't do the things that we should be doing. I'm like, what are we supposed to be doing really?
Right.
And that's been a big question for me because everybody comes at this understanding of violence in a different way. So to me, just back to it is, in order for us to see any changes, we don't need to be more violent. We just need to be more protective and more aware, more involved with actually happening, and look at ourselves as ways of like, if something is happening and we know it's wrong, we don't have to be told it's wrong. We don't need a book to read to tell us it's wrong. We just feel it. We have to say something and do something and show up to it. And it's not about protesting either. Yeah. It's the day-to-day. It's your action. Like, remember that time in Paia and those guys were fighting and the dude brought out a knife?
Yeah.
And then I went up to him and I was just like, whoa, what is that? You know? And I just took the knife out of his hand.
Yeah.
And that was it. Because it was just that presence alone.
It's the presence. It's full presence.
Yeah.
And we were just coming off of a weekend.
Yeah.
So we had, it wasn't just you had Pasha.
I had everybody.
Kevin Wall, everybody. The squad was with you.
Everybody was there. And so,
but that's the protector piece of masculinity that is so important. Because there are weak men amongst us.
Yeah.
And when I'm saying weak men, I'm not talking about weaklings like you're not strong. I'm talking about weak people who are predators on others.
Yes.
Or who take from others.
Yeah.
And so as men embodied, I'm not encouraging people to go out on the street and take knives out of people's hands.
No.
You can do that.
No.
But how would you invite a man into his physical embodiment? You know, whatever his perspective is, wherever he's coming from, into the physical embodiment of protector?
Most times with the work, and this is something I just want to mention as well, is I see a lot of men, you know, on the social medias, and they're talking about, you know, how to be a man, how to do this and everything else. But I don't see them on the ground. You know, I don't see them in front of people. I don't see them actually doing it. It's all this, you know, it's like theoretical, you know, academic, scholarly thing, which I love. There's a place for that. But a lot of times men imagine that they themselves know something without actually doing it. So let's not get learning confused with acquiring information, because the learning happens in the doing. And if you're not actually doing the thing, then how can you say anything about it?
Yeah.
I mean, look at cultures. It's like we can judge people, you know, that eat horse or something like that, or like eat bugs, because we don't do that. But if you're not involved in that culture and you don't know where it's coming from, then how can you judge it?
Right.
You can perceive it, you can have an opinion, but to therefore make it a statement that says, it's like we need to address
or to call it wrong.
Or call it wrong.
Sometimes that's the energy too of the entitlement, is to see something from another culture and determine it to be wrong before you've ever even experienced it.
Exactly. Or even know what their life is like.
Yeah.
It's like bringing ourselves into that. So when it comes to men, to call them in, from the experiences that I've had on our events and our gatherings and our weekends, I see a lot of men that are very hesitant about it, and they have their feeling about it. Some men, it's just like, okay, hey, it's your sovereign choice as a person. Do you want to participate or not?
Right.
But I will ask you. So to me, it's more of an invitation. I'm not going to say, hey, look. And then once they're in it, watch what happens. With all the fear going on, and then they get hit or they get wrestled or whatever, it's like they feel alive after. It's like that resistance, that friction that they've wanted to feel, and they've been avoiding it their whole life, and then wondering how come. And then it happens. It's like this just release.
But there's this whole story building up to that moment that this is going to hurt. This is going to cause me pain. This is going to whatever. I'm going to get knocked out in front of everybody. Yeah. That's a real fear.
Yeah.
That's a real fear.
The fear of being shamed, the fear of being triggered because maybe you've been through abuse when you're a kid.
Right.
You know, the fear of just, this is a big one too for a lot of men that I've seen, is they feel so weak and they're not able to protect their family, and they know they can't. But they're going to do everything in their ability to avoid it.
Right.
But they know they can't.
Yeah.
And they're like holding on to that thing. So for me, it's always an invitation, and by showing by example. My own character, my own personality is like, it's fun, it's play. Bringing the play aspect to it has been huge. But then also like, this is ceremony too.
Yeah.
Like what is our offering here? This energy that's happening. We all have to make sacrifices. We all have to make offerings. And you know, people are like, suffering is a perspective. That's a privilege. Mm-hmm. That's a privilege that you can say that suffering is a choice. There's things that happen to people and they don't have choices to do that.
Yeah.
And if you think because you just change your mindset, therefore it doesn't exist, no.
It's more suppression.
It's more suppression, and you become an oppressor. Like, you should be able to get out of that hole because I did. It's like, but it's not the same.
We have different experiences.
Exactly. We're all dealing with different things.
And, you know, I would say that there is a way out of the hole ultimately.
Yeah.
But it's not just, like you said, it's not just about learning and mindset. No. It's about the experience of having gone through a new experience that reinforces, okay, that experience no longer defines me. Now I have a new experience in front of me that opens up a whole new world. And so that willingness to step in, to even feel what that feels like. We've seen it over and over. I saw you guys just had EMX up in Devon.
Yeah.
Embercombe.
Yeah,
You had
Embercombe.
two twins fighting.
Yeah.
The Harry brothers. Harry's brothers.
Yeah.
Like, consider this.
Yeah.
Two very successful young men doing their thing. Twins.
Yeah. Twins.
What was that
Identical
like?
twins. It was unreal because like one of the brothers, I forget which one it was, but he was like, I'm here to face my demons.
And looking in the mirror.
It's like the same. And then like, some of the guys are agging him on. It's like, okay, who's the smartest? It's like, me. Who gets the most girls? Me. And then we're like, oh shit. So it's like fun,
Yeah.
But when they go in, they're in. And it's brotherly love. And they've said the most beautiful things to each other. Yeah, man, one of the brothers had like an ace up his sleeve. It's like when they were done, he was like, I wanted to like share this moment with you because we've never done this before.
Yes.
But you're my brother and I love you. We're born together. It's just like, man.
Imagine that. You never done this before. Your brothers growing up in the same household and not ever coming up against one. And you were in the same womb.
Yeah. Dude, I know. All the guys there were crying. And so there's that beauty that comes from it. So yeah, man, it's just the habituation of the fear. And I understand it and I respect the fear because, it's no place for me to orient from. And I use
Why
it
does
as
that make you emotional to think about? It's beautiful,
I think I've lived a lot of my life in fear. Like when it came to fighting, and just getting drunk and just being an idiot. It's like, I was afraid. I was afraid of someone taking something from me because there was so much that was taken. And I'm like living with that.
Yeah.
But I feel like through this work and being with you guys and witnessing things like that with the twins has brought a whole nother understanding. So I'm putting in reps, I'm habituating myself to shift my perspective on things, but still respecting where it came from.
Yeah.
So it still makes me emotional because I don't ever want to forget that. Because as soon as I forget that, then I've left all that behind. I've become something that I don't know what that would be because everything that happened previously has brought me here.
It's a part of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
a lot of the kind of spiritual tendency is to discard,
Yeah.
leave behind
Yeah.
the trauma versus integrating it and taking it with you.
Yeah, like whatever doesn't serve you, right?
Right.
And I think that's, again, it's a selfish way of viewing ourselves. It's like, well, this doesn't serve me. It's like, that's one of the biggest issues that I see with people, not just men too. So we're talking about, violence aspects and this and that. It's like, fear, I see that people don't know how to commit very well anymore or have responsibility for things. And I say that because of things.
Huge.
I see that there's, divorce rates and like single mothers and, just praising women for not needing a man and this and that. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but look what happens.
Yeah.
Look what happens to a people. And if this is what we're going to call the culture,
Right.
and this is what we're supporting, like broken homes.
No way.
Like, I don't support that. I do support people and their choices and where they're at in their life and what they feel is needed and necessary. And like, yeah, if you tried and it's not working, then it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But to aggrandize it as being the path,
Yeah.
and just saying like, I just let that go. It's like, then you're gonna forget and you're gonna make the same mistake again.
So
It's just on repeat.
for me, this brings back into the sacred and into the ceremony. It's
Yeah.
like when we are committed, especially as men,
Yeah.
and we devote ourselves to a life path or a relationship, a family, a village, whatever
Yeah.
it may be. Again, when those challenges come, what are you going to do? You're
Right.
going to hide, or are you going to fight?
Yeah.
Or are you going to face it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Stand for something or you'll fall for anything kind of sayings, right? So this is a thing that comes up for me a lot is people are lacking leadership.
Yes.
People are lacking, examples or role models to look at on how to be, and they end up finding ones because they're the most exposed or the ones that are the most successful in this society and this and that, or they're getting praised because they were nonviolent, like Martin Luther King.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like it's an interesting thing because like
It's ironic that his life ended in brutal violence.
Exactly.
In front of his children and family.
Yeah, and let's just speak on general terms, right? So nonviolent, but there's a lot of other leaders and examples that weren't violent, but said, we're here, we're going to protect ourselves, we're going to protect our people, we're going to protect our community.
Malcolm X, other side of the coin.
And they're very intelligent, articulate, amazing leaders that kind of just got pushed off to the side.
Yeah.
Like, why did that happen? You know what I mean? And I believe it's because this society wants to continue to create passive, inebriated, amnesia-filled,
Yes.
Constantly needing the dopamine, sugar, serotonin hit, just flatlined people because they're more easily to manipulate.
And then what happens after that is, in the 1960s, there were so many coups, so many assassinations. Now that our government has confessed, like CIA and FBI were behind the killing of Martin Luther King.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And what that does is it shuts people up.
Yeah.
It makes powerful men like yourself, like myself, question.
Yeah.
Can we really use our voices in that way? Or are they going to come for us?
Entirely.
And so then what happens after that is you get other men who show up in the community that can manipulate.
Yes.
And so we're talking about influence, especially of our young men.
Yeah.
You got the rise of Andrew Tate.
Yeah, all of that.
And as we're talking about this, that dude's sitting in jail in Romania.
Yeah.
And, not to say that everything that he is saying is wrong, because I'm not on that.
No.
However, this is some of the pieces that he's bringing through specifically around the treatment of our women, of our sisters.
Yeah.
They're our sisters.
Yeah.
We don't need to talk about anybody like that. When that gets, it seeps into the youth, it's a real problem for culture.
It is.
And so here's Andrew Tate says he doesn't trust a man that cries.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
The bullshit. I say that entirely. To me, crying is a strength, right? I think what I want to talk about with that question though is, why would a man like that say something like that?
Yeah.
Not necessarily what I would say, but why would a man like that say that? And then you look at how things move, right? Not just him, but like other men in the society. This kind of goes back to the beginning of our conversation. But this is what I suppose, right? That when people's are seeing the world around them falling apart, like a recession, poverty, people dying, COVID, the amount of stress and pressure that happens, people will become depressed. And they're gonna look to somebody who's like, oh yeah, I don't give a fuck, and blah, 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 and like being the loudest voice in the room.
Yep. Projecting the strength.
Yeah. So then when a man like that who shows luxury and success and wealth in all these ways, because this is what our society values, and that's what people want to pay attention to, now we're in a dangerous position.
Yeah.
Now it's very dangerous. So then now you can't cry? There's no time to cry. That's what happened to the people who've come before us, and why do you think we're in this mess in the first place?
Yeah. Because of our inability to grieve.
Exactly.
As men, what I'm saying is, it's about the capacity to grieve.
Yes.
So you're mentioning the things that are happening: recession, job loss, COVID, death, et cetera. Why is it important for us to grieve?
Man. So it's gonna get pretty deeply cultural here, but grieving is the foodstuffs for the ones that are left behind, for the hungry ghosts, for maybe I could put it like this: when we growing up as we're little children, and hopefully we were in a home with parents that loved us and cared for us and wanted to nurture us. Growing up, we imagine ourselves a certain way, but our parents kind of become the love-hate relationship as we go. But in the parents' view, and this is what I hear a lot too, is they praise the child. They want them to grow up, be healthy, strong, be fully themselves, have their personality, know that the world is there for them, know that they're looked after, know that they're cared for. And yet, too, you gotta grieve it, because one day that child is gonna grow up and not need you anymore. And you put all that time, all that energy, not as an investment, but because that child is a soul, and that soul needs to express itself through this body. It's not just a meat sack. This isn't just a flesh bag. And it upsets me when people talk like that. Don't say things like that, because you just demeaned yourself. You just took all the things that I just said about being alive in this body, and you just destroyed it. So the grief needs to happen for it to continue to move. It's the food stuff for the soul.
Yeah.
For the soul to be nurtured and nourished in the way that it can then move on to the next and move on to the next. So when someone dies, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
If we don't grieve the loss of that person and show that soul that they were meaningful, and then how do they go on to the next place? They won't. They'll stay, and they'll keep bringing the impoverishment that they left behind, because we haven't grieved it. So why is grieving important? I think when we have a culture that's lost its place in history and in time, and no longer has the rite of passage for the boys and girls to become adults, no longer have a place for our elders, our old folks, to still be of service and to have value, and we don't have a way of understanding relationships as adults that are trying to take care of both ends in order for us to continue to adapt and to grow and to learn, then grieving becomes our culture, because those are all the things we don't have.
Exactly.
And if we don't grieve those things, we'll never become aware of them, and nothing will change.
Yeah.
So grieving isn't something like I see people put on like grieving workshops and stuff, and I'm like, I don't think that's how this works.
But like doing that because they are missing the mechanism to even go there.
Yes.
They need to. Men are coming here to grieve too.
Yeah, I see the what you call it, like the invitation to it, the invigoration of the thing. And maybe the workshop will help you understand it further. But even people come here to the events to grieve, but there's a lot of things happening at the same time. Grief people see as an emotion, as a feeling, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's an action. It's the same thing like sparring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the same. You know, you might not be putting gloves on with the person that's in front of you, but there's something else that's got some gloves on that you can't see that's hitting you.
Yeah.
And you're feeling it your whole life, and you're feeling pressured by it. And it's like, feed them. Feed the thing that's starving you. Feed them. So I'm not talking down on the workshop, a grief workshop. I'm saying that alone as being the thing, no.
Yeah.
We need everything else attached to it. It's kind of like shamanism. All of a sudden, it's a career choice. How? Shaman shows up when everybody else got their things together. And then that one shows up because they're like, okay, we need to repair the fabrics of time. We need to bring people through the medicine. So I'm needed now.
Yeah.
But now we've gone too far, too fast, too much, too soon. And I think we need to just harness back into this action of grieving. And then everything else will awaken from there. That's what I believe. And sometimes getting punched in the liver makes you bow out and you start crying. Well, there it is. Maybe it was hard for the man or the woman.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what needed.
One of the other pieces is like, a lot of the misogyny comes because of the nuclear family and because of the decimation of the nuclear family. And we know this, and we've talked about this many times, it's like the return to village or to re-village or however we see it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not even a return, but the trajectory towards village.
Yeah.
It's necessary so that everyone has a role and that everyone's role is respected.
Yes.
And it's just the truth.
Yeah.
We all have a role to play here, and a part of each of our roles is to respect each other in our roles.
Yes.
And to not project disrespect, especially to young men, because they're so impressionable.
Entirely.
How would you invite a young man to respect himself and to respect women?
I've been fortunate enough to have nephews that are 16, 17 years old, and there's 4 of them that are coming to mind right now.
Yeah, Jack.
And and fortunate in the way that I say that, like, they're sensitive, they're sensitive to it, and they love their mothers. And so when they see things like that, they're like, oh, this guy's crazy, you know what I mean? They might like say some things, they're like, oh yeah, but then they're just like, oh, whatever. Because there's already so much going on. So when I think about them, I've been fortunate. So when I think about those that don't have that set up for them, how do I invite these kids? For me, that's a tough question.
Start with self-respect.
I don't really know.
That's where it starts for me. I feel like
I think so.
I feel like a lot of the disrespect that's projected on women, it comes from a lack of, like, alignment, internal compass, all the thing. But it's like, if we don't respect ourselves, if we're giving away our energy to pornography, to fake food, to plastic, how could we ever respect another human being?
Yeah, truly.
You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. I think that as well, is I always like see the layers. So this is probably not going to be a well-liked thing that I'm about to say. But the hero's journey that everybody wants to be on, no, that's fucking us up. Too many heroes.
Damn.
Too many GoPros. Too much of that. It's like, oh, you know, the hero's journey. It's like, man, look at these heroes. They're the most self-absorbed people. You ever hear about Hercules? That guy sucks. He did the most terrible shit. But he like had all his strength, you know, and all this stuff. And then guess what he had to do? He had to go on his redemption journey, you know, and had to do all of that.
That's missing from the hero
That's missing from the human journey too. And so when I think about like self-respect and the things that are going on, it's like we have to restore ourselves from this hero.
Yes.
And start delving into the other aspects of ourselves. Grief walkers, you know what I mean? Something like that.
Yes.
Restoring ourselves, because the hero's journey is just overplayed. It's played out. It's not working. It's the same thing how I feel about king shit.
Yes.
You know, I love kings. I do, but too much talk. It's like, how much self-aggrandizement do you need? Self-respect, please.
Yeah.
But self-aggrandizement to the point where it's like, me, and I'm the creator of all my reality all the time. I was like, I think that's how we got into capitalism in the first place. I think that's kind of how we just do too much. And we're overwhelming and exploiting and misogyny.
The source is manifest destiny.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's rooted in taking, and it's rooted in colonization.
Yeah. And I know better than you.
Right.
And I know what to do with this better than you do. Right?
Yeah.
So let me extract from you and bring it into the thing that I deem is correct.
Right.
Where does that insanity come from? Well, I'm the hero. Let me do my hero thing. Like it's killing us.
What's your kind of understanding or knowledge around chiefs, and specifically chiefs in the Kanaka Maoli culture?
Yeah.
You know, Hawaiian culture. We hear a lot about what was the princess or queen's name? Leilani.
Lili'u Okalani?
Say it again.
Lili'u Okalani?
Yeah, I hear a lot about that.
Yeah.
Give me some.
And there's Princess Ka'alekahi.
Yeah. Tell me something about some chiefs.
You want to hear about that?
And where I'm going with it is, tell me a little bit about that, because I want to tie it back into the war element and what you have to do when you come back from war.
Oh, yeah, bro.
That's like a piece that would be important.
Yeah, so at least in Hawaii, we became a sovereign nation that was recognized, you know, by the League of Nations at the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a whole lot of, like, research this, because I don't need to talk about it per se. But illegally overthrown sovereign nation by a U.S. corporation through missionary descendants that own plantation lands and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And that has been going on for over 100 years. And the people are still dealing with it. So that to me is what happens when a people lose their own understanding of how to do rites of passage, take care of their elders, all the things I said before.
Yeah.
It happened to our people on those islands. And why? So there was a time, and this isn't a popular opinion either, but there was a time when there was no chiefdoms in Hawaii. It was done with an elder council. And so you would have different villages, and a lot of these villages were tied familially, because at some point, you know, there was a marriage and then the babies would come. So before all of that, you would have like a konohiki, and like, there would be like people who would like catalog, you know, like go up into the mountain, check all the birds, see how everybody's going, and they go from, you know, the mountain down to the ocean. And they're just checking in on the village, and then they would have a council. And then they would all say, okay, what we got? Like, what are the resources, per se, for us to share? So then now everybody's living in that village-mindedness, like how to take care of each other.
And again, everyone has a role.
Everybody has a role.
Has something to offer.
And we'll talk more about that too. So everybody has something to offer. The children, you know, are learning from each other. Multi-generational households, you know what I mean? Like everybody's sharing in that. You know, grandpa isn't just sitting around watching TV, you know, numbing out. You know, grandpa's like fixing nets. You know what I mean? And grandma's making bark cloth tapa. You know what I mean? And telling stories.
Not watching stories, not watching sports, telling the legends of our time and of our people.
Yeah, exactly.
We're missing that.
Yeah.
Truly.
Entirely. And so these are the codes from our ancestors. They gave us the blueprints already. And it's in the songs, it's in the stories, it's in the stars, it's all there. But when it comes to chiefdoms, so there was a time when conquering chiefs came to the islands and just changed everything. Because
like
colonization.
Kamehameha?
Yeah, okay, Kamehameha was already there, but it was times before him.
Okay.
So there's been like hundreds of years of that engagement, and these are chiefs that came from other Pacific islands, whether that be Samoa, Tahiti, Tonga, depending on who you ask. There's navigators that came and they brought their chiefs, and there's like well-known stories. I don't want to delve too deeply into it, but when those chiefdoms came, they brought that top-down hierarchy. They brought the idea that I am the most dominant, powerful one. And all of this is now mine, and all of you are now mine. But there were good chiefs too, don't get me wrong, that were still able to maintain the village and do it that way. But what ended up happening was chiefs like to play war games, just like presidents and prime ministers do.
Yeah.
So once they started engaging in the war,
Was it
that's
for
when the cultures
is it for
started getting cut.
resources? Is it for land? Is it for, what's
A lot.
do you deem the purpose
To
to be?
me, it's an infection of the mind. To me, it's like a syndrome.
It's that same fear, bro.
It's the fear.
It's the same fear.
The thing we're talking about. And that fear then translates into greed, translates into the self-aggrandizement. They're the hero.
Yeah.
In their mind, they're the hero, okay? But to everybody else, they're just another, NPC, and they're the hero. And so look what happens to the people. So that's what I look at when it comes to chiefdoms. So not that all those things were wrong or bad, but look what happened. You have one chief, okay? And Kamehameha is the one, united all the islands. You ask somebody else to say he conquered it. Because through that conquering, a lot of genealogies were ended.
Right.
And others were put up.
Right.
And a lot of has been forgotten. So it depends on who you ask. How many sides to one story, And so with that happening, then there's a creation of a nation because of all the influence that was coming from traders, missionaries, foreigners.
It's almost like it put cracks in the foundation, and that allowed more greed and corruption to seep in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like
Family
a syndrome.
is so important.
Yeah.
Family and lineage
That
is
unit,
so important for society.
The family unit, and that's why we can't call that nuclear.
Exactly.
Because that nuclear family will implode upon itself.
Exactly.
And we don't need outside authorities to dictate upon what that family is supposed to look like. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So
this could be controversial.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh man, like in that village kind of way, it's like this is where the misogyny aspect comes to. This idea that a man should have multiple wives. Like all of this. Like why? Like I don't know why. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe there was men who fought a war and then they died. And there was a man that was left and he had enough to take care of everybody.
Right.
Maybe we're perceiving it in a different way because we're not living that life because we don't understand that culture and now we're judging it.
So let's talk.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just saying maybe there's aspects to it that there's multiple women and one man. That's like a lioness pride.
Yeah.
The lioness is the one that runs the pride, not the male. Mm-hmm. If he's not doing what he's supposed to do and he's not showing up as the thing that he needs to be, they kill him. So chiefdoms.
Right.
Okay, so the people still had a choice too. If you were not a healthy chief,
yes,
the people could leave you.
Yeah.
And not only that, but they wouldn't grieve you when you died. And not just that, but they leave your bones in your body to rot out in the desert. And nothing. You'd be forgotten.
Yeah.
So we as a people still have that power from our ancestors.
Yeah.
It's not just from the Kanaka side. It's like we all have that within us. We can choose, on how we want to be, but we need a village to help us continue to do that. So just talking about that culture is where I get a lot of my reference points. And I think that's why it's difficult for me to involve myself in a lot of the politics that goes on in this society because I already have a culture, like 2-3 cultures already that I can reference, where a lot of people in this society, the majority do not. They have a city.
Most Americans do not, and I'm one of them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I grew up, I'm biracial, grew up in Ohio.
Right.
Yeah, we talked about this before. I grew up on WWF wrestling, like G.I. Joes and toys.
Oh,
and
man.
The culture was really...
that's part of it too.
The culture was really the commodification of all of the... It's kind of art and things, to put it like that, but our stories are not old stories.
No.
You know what I'm saying? And so I wanted to wrap up on that hero's journey piece because we have actual, quote unquote heroes, soldiers coming back from war. Yeah. And they don't know how to integrate. Right. And we call those people heroes. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them feel dismay for what they've done. Mm-hmm. A lot of them feel shame for what they were asked to do and the fact that they said yes. Mm-hmm. And then we call them heroes. Previously, you've told me some stories about how in battle, the hero's journey ends with, you bring back the elixir to the community, and now you're a hero. It's like when you've done some fucked up shit. Yeah, it's not like that.
No,
you don't come back with the gold. You come back defeated. You come back, grieving for the loss of maybe another human that you had to take their life. Yeah, and so What in your teaching or in your experience has like what's the other side of that look like?
Yeah. You know, war is it's not a human condition. For us to engage in war is not something that's just what humans do.
I agree.
That's what expansionist imperialist societies do. There's a very big difference. Because if we're going to talk about, mankind, humans are just like that, that's just not true. Because there's cultures that have existed for thousands and thousands of years and never committed acts of genocide or war on other people. So are we just going to discount them? Mm-hmm. Just somehow we're the only humans and they're just kind of doing their thing in the jungle or in the desert or in the rainforest, somewhere?
Yeah.
No, they're humans too. So that needs to get moved out, right, of our understanding. So this is what I need to say. Battles, okay? Culturally intact, especially like being on islands. If you're gonna go to battle, it probably looks like something like this. There's only so much around us in order to feed everybody. And so maybe we got ahead of ourselves and we put our lives as human beings above the rest of nature. So now the population has grown. We're not looking at it as a bad thing. We're just like, we've been so blessed. We've been given so much that we're able to raise our babies together and have a whole another generation. But now it's taking a toll on the very thing that we love, which is our home and our habitat and our environment. And the love that we have for our home and the love that she's giving back to us is now coming to a point where it's stressing. Because there's other people who need to eat and live and have families too. Yeah. So what they would do is they would get the warriors in the village, and I'm just gonna make this story short, but they would get the warriors in each village. And mind you, these people are probably cousins down the line,
right?
Because this has happened before. And every generation, that's why the elders are important, because they know, like when they were a child, this thing had happened, and now they're older. They remember. And they're like, this is how we need to teach our young ones. And this ability, for us to have all of this comes at a cost. And how do we pay back this debt that can never be paid? Well, something needs to eat. So they would get the warriors together, they would have ceremony, and they would pray. They would pray for the life of the ones that they're going to come into combat with, because it's just too many people. But who are the first ones to die and put their lives on the line? The men. Yeah. So they pray for their brother, pray for their cousin. And when they go out and then they fight, it was typically like one-on-one. That's where a lot of our war dances came from.
Yeah. It's also praying for their health.
Praying for their health.
So that they show up strong. So that they show up to this ritual and to this ceremony in a good way.
Yep. When you know that your life is gonna possibly be ended by someone else, you wanted to be sure that they were worthy to take that life.
Yes.
To take your life. And you wanted them to be so worthy. And you wanted to receive that from them too. You didn't want someone who, just come and blindside you. Or get a drone and bomb you.
Oof.
Look you through the scope and shoot you. Don't even know your name.
Never even make eye contact. Never know your name.
Never know you. Nothing. So back in the times when the culture was intact, they knew what they had to do because they remembered. They remembered to remember. So those ceremonies are done. Each culture does it in a different way. The battle is set. Whoever dies, dies. Whoever lives, carries that death. Different cultures would do it in certain ways. Some, they would have to carry that life for them for the rest of their life, right? They'd have to take care of that body, that skull. They would know where they buried it. Other cultures, from what I was taught, was they would now have to be in service to the village for the debt of that life. They now needed to fill in the void that was left from that man.
Yes. And
there was a cost of that. Now you're being humiliated. Now you're being shamed in this village, and you're just being put through the ringer, But what the people are doing is they're wanting to see who you are as a man. Like, are you worthy? Were you a worthy enough man to take the life of my son, of my brother, of my husband? Mm-hmm. Well, this is what you're gonna have to go through. Essentially, they become a servant and a slave. Yeah. And then for a whole season. And then through their acts of their way of being, their humbleness, their humility, their bravery, their continuation, their resiliency, their ability to navigate all of that, then they become accepted into the village and possibly take on a wife. I don't know. Possibly take on the family of who he killed.
Left behind.
And then they're given a new name. So all of that, in that, everybody's going to interpret it differently. But this is what I want to say, and this is a perspective that's important. Everything that I said are safety mechanisms. They're safeguards that you have to unlock to get to this next part of the journey of the grieving. It's not just the process. It's a complete action. It's the ritual, it's the ceremony, it's the navigation, it's receiving a new name. Because like how you're saying with these brothers who come back from war, and the way that we conduct ourselves now, it doesn't look like that at all.
No.
And nobody's
And then
grieving.
they want to dangle college in front of them?
Yeah.
You want to come back from war and get free college?
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, I can just imagine how disorienting that would be.
Yeah. And a lot of these, let's just put it this way too. So just to attach the two of them, these men and women that are getting recruited, you know, a majority of them are coming from poor neighborhoods, you know, from poor places in the city.
Right.
And, you know, they don't have a lot of options, you know. And so that's what's carrying them through. And so education looks like a good incentive, you know, especially when you don't have any of that.
When you can't afford it.
And you can't afford it and all these things. And so that's another part of, you know, the kind of the fault lines, you know, the cracks in the seams of the society, is that somehow now we're using education, which should just be a human right, as a way to get you to risk your life and kill another stranger. And so it's like this way of, like I was describing with the village and how it would go, it's like, let's just say I made that all up. Let's just say I made it all up, okay? And that's just a story. Let's just say it's not attached to any culture at all. It's just a story, okay? Now take that story and fit it to the one that we're actually living in. Exactly. What do you prefer?
I prefer integration. I prefer respect.
Yeah.
And specifically that piece that you said about having to pray for your enemies.
Yeah.
And to know their names.
And they're not your enemy. They're your cousin. They're your brother.
Damn.
They're not the ops.
Yeah.
They're a life. They're somebody like, you know.
Yeah.
Like if I would have to go and like kill you, that would destroy me.
Yeah.
But it was like the everything else around us.
Maybe this journey will come to that.
Needed it. You know what I mean?
You think one day it'll come to that? Me and you?
I hope not, man. But if this is the story we're living in, bro, you don't know what's gonna happen.
We don't know. We actually don't know what's going to happen. But no, you're my brother through and through. We would never take it there.
But on that level, though,
Yeah.
just saying like the importance of it is like knowing that story is that's what I live with. I know what I would have to do, and I'm more than happy to go through it. But again, what kind of men want to do that?
I know.
What kind of men understand that kind of way of living and being to actually change how this goes? You know, like I was saying with the village and how we do it now, and like these men coming back is like we don't know how to grieve them to receive them anymore. They're still living with the same name. We haven't given them a new name. We haven't helped them, you know, traverse the you know, we haven't helped them traverse the amount of souls that are following them. You know, they don't know how to do it, and we don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
We forgot. So,
And I would say it's outside of our nature to fly a drone and drop a bomb. But what happens is those men come back and they take their own lives.
yeah,
Because they don't have the mechanism, the culture, the community to grieve, to integrate it.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Is like on that cultural level, that to me is the thing that we need to focus on most. Is like, what is this culture? What is this that we call a society?
Yeah.
And is everything that we're doing is somehow advancement and progress towards what? I mean, look at what's happening to us.
Towards what?
To where? Where are we going?
To what end?
To what end? And it keeps going incessantly. And that's why I say about imperialism and things like that. It's like what we do here is an act of a revolution.
Yeah.
You know, do I feel myself as a revolutionary? Yes. Do I want to put myself up on a pedestal and say like, hey guys, let's all do this? No. But what I want to do is keep telling the stories and keep showing up in these places and see who's got it. Because we can't do it with the hero's journey anymore. It's not about one person. If I'm lending my voice to it, great. But you gotta lend your voice. Our other brothers gotta lend their voice.
Exactly.
And if we're gonna talk about, you know, suicide rates and you know, poverty and like all these things, I'm just like, to me, there's only so much one person can do. So I'd rather have more of us be called in into what we're doing and what we're creating.
Yeah.
So we can do it together.
More leaders.
More leaders, men and women, whoever they may be, and more children you know, and healthy homes and beautiful families, because they're the ones who are going to carry these stories. They're the ones that are going to continue to move with what we're learning, continue to move through and learn from. But that's always a prayer. It's always a prayer. And when I think about what we're talking about, masculinity, right? And how this is happening. And we talked about a lot of big things, and we only have so much time, you know, to move through everything. But a high-value man, is what's being talked about a lot. Oh, what's a high-value man? What's a high-value woman? And you got all these people, you know, on this red pill shit, talking about all this stuff. And and I'm like, you know what they forget? They forget how important it is to orient yourself and where you're at. Every time I hear about what they have to say about what's a high value, it's always out there. There's always something else out there that you're supposed to be doing that you're not doing. There's always somebody grinding harder than you. There's somebody who's gonna wreck himself just to get to the place that you want to go. And I'm like, why are we doing this to ourselves? Like, what happened to the connection, you know, to our homes and to our places and to our people and just the love that we have, you know?
Why? Because the truth is, it's not out there.
It's not.
It's not out there. It's here.
It's right here.
Right in here.
It's right here. And if anybody's telling you, like, you got to do X, Y, Z for you to be a high value person, I mean, I don't know. You could listen to it, I guess.
Be careful. There's always a more expensive car. There's always another Porsche or Bugatti. You know,
and I would love to have more money too, but that's not the focus.
Yeah.
The focus is the relationships. And what we're doing here, because, like I was saying, what's the value? What are we oriented in? What's really existing for us? So many people can sit on the computer and do so much. Trading and marketing and like all that. Like, that's what we're valuing in the society. But then immediately the thought is, that should take us somewhere. Now we need to go somewhere else and we need to do these things. But I don't know anybody that told me about how to navigate with the stars. I haven't heard anybody tell me about how to traverse a mountain and get plant medicines. Where's that at?
Right.
And I'm wondering, that's the thing that we're missing. That's another part of the grief process.
Connection.
Like, the connection. That connection is so much more important. And pitfalls, you know, traps.
Yeah.
It's like we setting ourselves up for our own traps.
Yeah.
And I like to say this a lot too. It's like, you know, you end up looking for the thing and you put a snare down because you're like, oh, I'm gonna get this, you know, this big paycheck, this big whatever, you know, I'm gonna get that animal, you know, and then you forget and you start walking around because you got distracted. And then boom, you step in your own snare, you're up there dangling in the tree. And one leg is just like, how'd I get here? What happened? It's like, oh man, you see?
You got caught in your own traps.
Got caught in your own traps. And then there's also that one too. It's like you're so focused and so determined on the thing that you want to achieve so badly that you're just putting bricks out, putting bricks. And all of a sudden, you finished it. You got to the thing, and you realize you didn't want to be there, and now you just bang your head on that wall that you made because you're just like, shit.
Dude, you just built your own prison because you neglected all of the relationships that supported you, that nurtured you, literally, and brought you into this life. And if we don't have respect for these relationships, I don't give a fuck what material possession you got.
Yeah, man.
You know, I love what you say. Like, at the end of the day, it's not about the bank account. It's about your relationship. All right, so
that was just off the top.
That was really good. I was in that moment. All right, so I'm gonna wrap it up. Some in the sun. We talked about, like, there were men within the last 100 years who had the calling and who stepped up, and, you know, we're in a new time now, and we're missing leadership. And so, I don't know. It's either how do you invite brothers into leadership, or what is your closing thoughts on masculine leadership?
My pathway, I can only tell others what I've already been through. So my pathway has always been in the dirt, in the water, in the sun, with the plant and the animal, and do the dance, you know, like sing the song.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can teach anybody. I can only live it as an expression. and then they'll find it themselves. But they'll never know. You'll never know if you don't go, if you don't see for yourself. But there's, to me, there isn't a 12-step program.
Yeah.
For me.
There's no top 3 ways to be a man?
No, dude.
You don't have a top 3 for it?
I know, but even with Sacred Sons, we like, oh, we gotta do this, we gotta build structure. Structure's important.
Yeah.
I agree. And there's Kale, and Kale is just like, yeah, just come out here. Put those gloves on for a bit, let's
and have a real experience.
Yeah, and let's go harvest some wood, and let's look at these stones and trip out these little stones and see what's going on and look at the stars, That's what I want to call in, And it's not this hippy dippy like airy fairy type shit. This is some real shit. Like, can you chop wood and carry water? Can you dig holes? Can you do this stuff? It's real life stuff. This is the exoteric to the esoteric. It's always been that way.
Yeah.
It's always been that way. And that's what I'm calling in. I'm calling in more fam that way. More people who understand the vision of what that means. Of like coming back to all that is here.
Yeah.
They're not making it somewhere else. Like learning. And what was I say? Oh yeah, don't get acquiring information confused with learning. And actually do the things so you can learn it.
Right. Yeah, real knowledge, real wisdom comes through experience and through repetition.
Absolutely.
So with that, if you're interested, you can join Kale at Maui Mana.
Yeah.
What's the next date? Do you know the next date of Maui Mana?
It's in March.
We have a Maui Mana experience.
Last week of March, yeah.
Coming up the last weekend in March.
Mm-hmm.
Come get knocked out.
I feel alive. No, come
reconnect with yourself,
deeply,
with the land, and with your brothers.
Yeah.
Because we need you. And
we do.
Yeah,
man. Yeah, here's to that too. And may this continuation be something that feeds all the ones that are hungry. And when we give the water of life to those whose thirst needs to be quenched, so we can continue living our life in a beauty way and harmonious for those that are coming after us and those that have come before us. So
beautiful.
Love you, bro.
Love you too, bro. With that, Adam Jackson, Kale Ka'alekahi. We're out, fam. Peace. E aloha e